talking about the independent woman herself and why she's failing in marriage. The
I
first
thought
part
the
was the man.
Yeah, I
I
thought
thought
it
we were
was the
talking about the man.
marriage itself. Like, why
Yeah.
is it when a woman who is formally educated is with a man who is not? Like, why those
Right.
marriages don't work? Was that the question? I think.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I don't,
Yeah,
I haven't
someone
read
else.
any stats on that, but just looking at the situations around me in my life and experiences over the past, few decades, um, it's mixed. It really is mixed. I've got several friends who are doing well. They're formally educated, and on an educational level, their husbands they're not equivalent on a formal education level. And some of them are still married and have been married for years, like almost 20 years. And some of them got divorced. Um, so for me, it's a mixed bag. I've seen both, probably just about equivalent. I was trying to think, is there one a little bit more so than the other, just with my surroundings, and not so much. Like I say, really both extremes. One has been married for a few have been married for a little while, and the one that got divorced probably 2, 3 years ago, and she was just telling me actually 2 nights ago that he's on his eighth relationship with a woman since they've gotten divorced, and they were not equally they weren't equivalent education wise. So I don't know. For me, it's mixed.
Mm.
I missed the
Yeah.
question. Can you?
Of course, can you please start writing these down? Please go get a
Yeah.
notepad right now
Okay,
and
but look.
have access
Okay.
about every question that I have.
She's still drunk.
No, I'll tell you what it
She
is.
don't remember the
I,
question
I'm over
herself.
here
And I didn't
trying to
drink.
get it together, keeping the
you
questions to
know what it
myself,
is?
and she
It's
loses
like
my listen.
somebody will say something and it'll make me have a thought, and then I go to look up the information.
That's why I
So
suck at these panels too.
yeah, that's what it is, because sometimes you guys are saying things and I'm like, oh, and a thought in my head pops up. So then yeah, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that,
And
so
then
I'm sorry.
somebody
So
told me if you get it.
yeah.
So
She was
basically, the
saying,
question
oh, go ahead.
is, so
Oh,
basically,
you,
when I read, so we know divorce rates are high. Women are filing for divorce.
Mhm.
And some of the higher divorces in when a woman is of a higher education, like we talked about, when you have to contribute so much more to the household. And I'm pretty sure those are the
Mhm.
things that have to do with it as well. But what is it about a woman who is formally educated to where, okay, so this is what I'm basing it off of. I saw one where it says that when people have equivalent education, they do pretty well in a relationship. So I took that, and then it said, well, women who are educated, divorce rates are high for people who have degrees. And then I saw another article that said that when you when you marry someone who is not your equivalent, and I'm sure they were talking about education, um, the divorce rate increases. So
Mhm.
we were saying, what is it? Why do you think that is in the psyche of the woman who is the formally educated? Does that make sense? Did that make
Yeah. Mhm.
I think she wants
So
better.
if we look at the way,
Look here,
so
Isaiah says, "Stop playing like y'all don't know." I think they tiptoeing, Isaiah. I
well,
think
yeah,
they are tiptoeing.
yeah, it's a sister code. I can feel it. It's
I
palpable.
feel it too.
Well, no,
But
I was about to say, to me, it makes sense because when we look at society in general, even the men, the cosign is every show that we have, that the expectation is that the men are supposed to be the lead, they're supposed to be the head of the household, all of those things. So I think when as a woman, the more in our mind, the more that we feel that we are improving, whether that's education, whether it's finances, in those areas, it's automatic that you are going to want to have a mate that is at your level or higher. Typically higher because too, you're always looking for that challenge to, to learn and things like that. So if you marry a man or with a man who you feel is not your equivalent, it's going to be very difficult to maintain a relationship if y'all don't share the same. And when I say values, I'm not just talking about like spiritual values or things like that. It's going to be very difficult when you guys are not, on the same playing field. That makes sense to me.
Good. Yep. I got several things to note on this. Several. So that boss bitch
Anybody else
narrative.
want to add to anybody? Any of the women want to add their 2 cents to why that they think that is? Let me ask you a question. Let me dig a little deeper into that. Do you think that women with a formal education find it hard to trust his leadership?
Why would that even be a factor in trusting a man?
I could see it, but I think that's ridiculous.
Well, no,
that
that's
kinda
not
goes-
what's ridiculous. We're talking about the question. We
No,
think
it's
ridiculous, but do you think
it's the yeah. Go ahead.
I don't think so. I think it's about like how we say it's about their record. So my thing is, if you are showing and proving, I don't think the education aspect has to deal with it, has anything to do with it. But I think a lot of times on face value, when you're just meeting somebody, I think that does come into play where especially for a woman, that if you are formally educated and you meet a guy on, like I said, face value, and that he's not, there are some automatic tendencies to think that he couldn't be, because everyone knows, like when you go to college, part of that process is just not the education part, but it's also the pruning that comes along with it, like just certain things that you're going to learn this in terms of socially. And so I think when you're meeting a guy who has not been, is just a mindset that comes along with it, that you automatically assume that maybe he's not polished. You know what I'm saying? Until you take the time to get to know them and then say, oh, okay, but yeah, definitely that assumption is there initially if you don't know the person.
we're talking about in marriages, there's a reason why they're leaving. We're talking about in a marriage, not when you initially meet them, because at this point you guys know each other. Y'all married.
Right. So I was going to say, going back to,
you go ahead, Tim.
Going back to that, you're married. I think it was maybe Trigger Mike was talking about it earlier on, and actually the AP also. It goes back to the woman at some point being condescending to the man, and more so reminding the man of what he doesn't have, right? And so the man feels inferior, the woman feels superior. And when you make, and again, tell me if I'm off base, but when you make that man feel less than a man, I know that's cliche, but when you make him feel like he's not enough, then there's a problem in the marriage, because there's going to be a push and pull effect completely. The woman's not going to be happy, the man's not going to be happy, and you've got a catastrophe waiting to explode.
So
but most men stay in that situation. It's the woman who leaves.
But the man may stay in the situation, but it doesn't mean he's committed and dedicated. He can go out.
If it involves children, he's not going to leave. Men are very logical, and leaving your children because you hate your wife, even to us, and as bad as it sounds, is not logical.
Physically.
It's not, right?
Physically.
Yeah, exactly. It's not logical.
But mentally, men leave all the time.
Sure, why not? Sure.
Why not?
I would say physically too. There's a lot of fatherless households.
No, they were never there in most of those households.
They had to because
they're married. Yeah,
they were never married.
Well,
they just dropped the sperm off and left.
Right, cohabitation situation without the marriage is, the cohabitation situation. They leave as well. The stats show that as well. So they do leave mentally and physically. But I get what you're saying, Tam.